They didn't ask, they just decided. And like always, I was expected to nod, smile, and make it all work. My name is Rachel Connors. I'm 28 years old, a senior accountant at a firm no one outside of finance has heard of, and I live a quiet life in a quiet building with no drama and no damage. I've built everything I have from the ground up: my degree, my job, my credit score, even my kitchen table. No handouts, no shortcuts. But if you ask my family, they'd probably say I'm the cold one. Not because I've ever yelled or walked out or done anything cruel, just because I stopped cleaning up their messes. You see, I have an older sister, Erin, 2 years ahead of me, but somehow always 5 steps behind. Erin has a way of making failure look like tragedy and making everyone else responsible for it. Lost another job. The boss was toxic. Kicked out of another apartment. Roommates were jealous. Another missed bill. She's trying her best. And my parents, Carol and Frank, they never question it. They just pivot, rearrange. And if they can't fix it directly, they turn to me. "You're stable, Rachel. You're lucky you can help." That was the phrase that followed me for years. Help with the car payment. Help with rent. Help with bail. Always help. And when I said no, the rare times I pushed back, they'd act like I was the one burning bridges. I learned early on my value wasn't in being loved. It was in being useful. But usefulness has limits, and they were about to find mine. Sunday dinner had a rhythm in our house. Same casserole, same table, same undercurrent of pressure disguised as politeness. That evening, something felt rehearsed. Mom greeted me at the door with a smile too wide to be sincere. "You look so thin, sweetheart. Are you eating enough?" Dad didn't say much, just a nod and a distracted, "Hey, kiddo." Erin was already at the table scrolling her phone, avoiding my eyes like a teenager called into the principal's office. I knew the signs. When my mother acted sweet and my father went silent, it meant they were about to tell me something they knew I wouldn't like. We made it through the salad. Mom complimented the weather like it was an achievement. Dad kept refilling his glass, and Erin kept picking at her food like it might bite back. Then Mom set down her fork, folded her hands on the table, and gave me that practiced smile she saved for requests wrapped in guilt. "Rachel," she began too softly, "we've been talking. Erin's had a rough time lately and, well, she's going to be moving in with you for a little while." Just like that. No question, no discussion. She said it like she was offering me cookies. Like, of course I'd say yes. I felt the room pause like they were waiting for me to resist, waiting for the pushback they could call selfish. I looked at Erin. She glanced up quickly, then away. My dad cleared his throat, already bracing for the argument. Instead, I smiled. "Of course," I said lightly. "If it helps Erin get back on her feet, I don't see why not." The silence that followed was sharp. My mother blinked, caught off guard. My dad exhaled like he dodged a bullet. Erin leaned back in her chair, smug, creeping across her face like moss. None of them noticed how still I went after that, how quiet they thought I'd caved. But what they didn't know, what none of them had thought to ask, was that I hadn't lived in that apartment in weeks, and I had no intention of letting Erin or any of them move into a place that no longer existed. I didn't wake up one day and decide to lie to my family. It took years, years of quiet disappointments, of guilt-wrapped favors and memory-hold sacrifices, of realizing that in my family, survival came with strings, and being the strong one just meant being the most convenient to use. When I was 21, Erin's car got repossessed. She called sobbing, said she couldn't get to her new job, said this one was different. She just needed a little help getting started. My credit was clean. Co-signing felt like a small thing. She stopped showing up to that job 3 weeks later, missed the payments. Guess whose credit took the hit? At 23, Mom called me crying because the mortgage was past due. Dad had been laid off. Erin had moved back in. I wired $2,000 the next morning. No one thanked me. At Christmas, Mom handed me a mug that said "World's Best Daughter," and I almost laughed. At 25, Erin got a DUI. First one we knew about, at least. Dad asked me to keep it quiet, said it would destroy the family's reputation. I paid for the lawyer. Erin never said a word. A year later, when she got pulled over again and I refused to help, Mom called me cold. "You've never understood what it means to worry for someone you love," she said. "Aaron's life is harder than yours." That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew. They didn't see me. They saw a function, a faucet they could turn on when something broke, a wallet that smiled. I started pulling back, politely declining, changing topics, saying, "I'll think about it," instead of yes. They noticed, and they didn't like it. One night, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, the condo I'd bought without help, decorated on clearance sales paid for month by month, with numbers and spreadsheets and quiet diligence. I stared at the front door and realized I didn't feel safe in it anymore, because it wasn't mine when they wanted something. It was always ours, just like my time, my money, my patience. So I made a decision. I called a realtor, sold the unit quietly, legally. Without fanfare, I moved into a small rental on the other side of town. No one asked where, and I didn't offer it. I could have told them, but I didn't. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, out of preservation. Because sometimes when you grow up in a family that only remembers your usefulness, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is disappear just enough to breathe. The text started on Monday. "We'll bring Erin's mattress Saturday morning. Frank's loading the boxes Friday night. She's excited to finally have her own space." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They were speaking to a version of me that no longer existed. Each message assumed I would open the door, rearrange my life, absorb the weight without making a sound. They'd done it before. They just didn't know I had stopped listening. By Thursday, Mom was texting me daily. "Let me know if you need anything cleaned before she moves in. Erin says she won't be a burden. She's bringing her own dishes." That one made me laugh quietly to myself over coffee. She hadn't washed a dish in her own apartment in years, but I let it all play out. I didn't push back. I didn't correct them. I waited Saturday morning. I left early. Coffee first, then a drive across town to nowhere in particular. I walked through a farmer's market I didn't plan to buy anything from. Stood in the sun longer than necessary. My phone vibrated in my pocket 3 times before I looked. Missed calls, voicemails. I let the fourth call go through Rachel. It was Mom, but not her soft voice. The brittle one. The one layered with panic. "What's going on?" she demanded. "There's someone here, some man. He says he lives in the condo, says you don't live here anymore." I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it, the unfamiliar space, the missing certainty. "You didn't tell us," she snapped. "You never said a word." "No," I replied evenly. "I didn't." There was scrambling in the background, the rustle of bags. Dad's voice sharp and low. "Erin saying something I couldn't hear?" "Rachel," Mom hissed. "What is this?" "I sold the condo," I said simply. "Weeks ago." "You what?" "I moved out." Quietly. I didn't think it mattered. No one asked where I lived, so I didn't say. For a moment, nothing. I imagined them standing on that porch, bags on the ground, arms crossed, realizing they'd planned an invasion and showed up at the wrong castle. Then Dad's voice cutting through. "You lied to us. You said she could move in," I said. "If it helps Erin, I don't see why not." I didn't say where. Another pause, a sharp inhale from Mom, and from Erin finally. "So what? We're just what? Supposed to figure it out now." She sounded young when she said it. Not angry, just lost. And for the briefest second, I almost answered, but I didn't. Because here's what they didn't know. I hadn't changed the locks out of anger. I hadn't sold the condo to make a point. I did it because I was tired of living in a space that never felt mine. I did it because I deserved to walk into my own home and not brace for impact. And because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who refuse to change is to stop making space for them. They thought that was the end of it. They were wrong because by evening, they were standing at my door. I knew they'd come. Even as I sipped my coffee that morning, even as I let their voicemails pile up, I knew Mom wouldn't let it go. She'd dig or call someone or show up just to prove a point that no matter how far I moved, I was still reachable, still obligated. By sunset, the knock came. 3 quick clipped hits, the kind you hear when someone's trying to stay polite, but is barely holding it together. I looked through their peephole. Carol, Frank, Erin, and a trunk full of boxes parked on the curb like it was moving day. I opened the door halfway. You found me, I said flatly. Mom looked flushed. Her lipstick faded and hair pushed back like she'd run her hands through it too many times. We tried calling, she said, voice tight. We didn't think you'd be here. It's my apartment, I said. But you said Dad's voice was rising now. You said she could move in. Now we're standing here with all her things and you're acting like we're strangers. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I never said she could move in here. I said, if it helps Aaron, I don't see why not. That was at the old place, which if you recall, I don't live in anymore. Erin stepped forward, then her arms crossed. Her cheeks were red, but not from embarrassment, from fury. This is petty, Rachel. You always act like you're so above everyone. But this is just cruel. I tilted my head. You packed up your life and drove across the city to move into someone's apartment that you didn't even confirm still existed. That's not cruelty, that's entitlement. Erin's voice cracked. You're my sister. Yes, I said. Cool. And you've spent years confusing that with free housing. Dad stepped between us. His voice edged with warning. Enough, Rachel. We're not leaving. We've put up with a lot from you. You owe this to your sister. There it was. The word that always hung unspoken. Oh, as if every dollar I'd paid, every hour I'd worked, every sleepless night spent solving problems I didn't cause, had been written down somewhere. Part of a silent contract I never signed. I stepped back, picked up my phone. What are you doing? Mom asked, eyes narrowing. I didn't answer. I dialed 3 rings, then 911, and what's your emergency? My voice stayed calm. Yes, I have family members outside my apartment who are refusing to leave. They're not on the lease. They weren't invited. I'd like to report. Trespassing. Erin's mouth fell open. Frank swore under his breath. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. Rachel, she whispered, almost pleading. You're calling the police on your own family. I asked you to leave, I said. You didn't. The dispatcher asked for my address. I gave it. Erin's voice shook with rage. This is going to ruin everything. Do you know what people will think of you? Do you know what they'll say? Yes, I said. They'll say. I finally stopped opening my door. Mom blinked. Her voice dropped to something smaller. You used to be kind. I didn't flinch. You used to notice when I was hurting. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy packed with every ignored boundary, every swallowed word, every moment I'd said yes when I wanted to scream, no. A patrol car pulled up 10 minutes later. The officer stepped out tall and calm, her hand near her belt but relaxed. Evening, she said. We received a call about trespassing. I nodded. That's me. She looked at my parents, at Erin, at the car with bags still in the trunk. Ma'am, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. This is our daughter, Frank said. This is a family matter, and this is her residence, the officer replied, which you're not allowed to occupy without permission. Erin looked like she might cry or throw something or both. You're going to regret this. Rachel? No, I said. I've regretted almost everything up until this point. This is the first thing I'm sure of. The next day, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 5 from Mom, 2 from Dad, the rest from numbers I didn't recognize, cousins probably, or family friends I hadn't spoken to since graduation. Then came the texts. Why would you do this to your own sister? Your mom is devastated. Erin's sleeping in her car. Is that what you wanted? I didn't reply. I just scrolled. Eventually, I found it, a Facebook post from my mother. Public 3 paragraphs punctuated by heartbreak emojis and a photo of Erin as a toddler. We raised both our daughters to care for each other, but one of them has forgotten what that means. We're heartbroken that Rachel, so successful, so fortunate, would turn her back in our time of need. Erin didn't deserve this. None of us did. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments from people I hadn't seen since I was 12, calling me selfish, cold, entitled. It wasn't new, just louder. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then for the first time in my life, I posted back a thread. Simple, no flair, no hashtags, Screenshot the $2,000 transfer I made to cover the mortgage. Screenshot my name on Erin's car loan, followed by the collections notice. A photo of the lawyer invoice from her DUI case. A timeline of every one-time favor I'd agreed to since I was 21. The receipt showing the sale of the condo, and finally a message I'd saved. One Erin had sent me 2 years ago, calling me a boring robot because I wouldn't let her crash for a month. I ended with one line: I didn't abandon my family. I just stopped volunteering for emotional debt. I turned off my phone after that, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need applause. I just needed quiet, and for once I had it. That night the apartment was still. No noise from the hallway, no buzzing phone, just the quiet of the fridge and the occasional creak of old pipes shifting in the walls. I made tea, chamomile. It wasn't for sleep. I didn't need help sleeping anymore. It was for the ritual, a soft cup held in both hands, steam rising like forgiveness I hadn't asked for. My phone lit up once. Mom, then again. Erin, I didn't open the messages. I didn't have to. I knew the rhythm by now. Shock, anger, guilt, pleading. Always in that order. I blocked both numbers, not out of cruelty, not out of pride, but because not every door deserves to be knocked on forever. I walked out onto the balcony. It was cold but not sharp. The kind of cold that reminded you you're alive. Below the city hummed along, people moving headlights, glowing someone walking a dog in a puffy coat too big for spring. A neighbor 2 floors down waved when she saw me. I waved back. It was simple, that small gesture, but it was more real than most of the things I'd done out of obligation. Inside, I turned off the lights one by one, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. No picture frames on the walls, no family photos, just quiet, just clean space. I didn't feel triumphant or bitter or broken. I just felt done. Done. Performing, done. Explaining, done. Being the spare oxygen mask for people who never learned how to breathe on their own. Somewhere out there, they were probably rewriting the story again, casting me as the villain or the cold one or the ungrateful daughter. Let them. I didn't come here to be loved. I came here to stop pretending I didn't vanish. They just told the story like I had, and now I've written it back.